All right, today we're diving into one of nature's most incredible stories, ecological succession. This is all about how life doesn't just bounce back after big changes. It literally rebuilds itself from the ground up. Let's get into it.
So just picture this for a second. A volcano erupts, covering everything in molten rock. Or a huge wildfire tears through a forest, leaving nothing but ash behind. It looks totally final, right? Like the end? But it's not. It's actually a new beginning. And the big question we're tackling is, how on earth does life make such an epic comeback?
Well, the answer lies in this fascinating process called ecological succession. Now, this is the official term for how an ecosystem changes over time, but it's not random at all. It's a predictable, orderly progression. Think of it like a relay race, where one community of living things shows up, changes the environment, and then hands the baton to the next group, and so on until things finally stabilize.
So yeah, let's frame this whole thing as nature's ultimate comeback story. It's a journey, and it has some really distinct and amazing stages. Okay, so what does this journey actually look like on the ground? Well, it pretty much follows these 5 key steps. It all kicks off with nudation. That's just the creation of a bare, empty slate. Then you get the invasion, when the first tough species arrive. Naturally, they start to compete for things like light and water. This leads to the reaction phase, which is super important. It's where those species actually change their own environment. And finally, everything settles into stabilisation, forming a balanced, mature community. This is basically our roadmap for today.
You know, every great story has its heroes, right? Well, in the story of succession, the first heroes to arrive on the scene are a really special group we call the pioneers.
So this pioneer community, these are the organisms that show up first. This is that invasion stage we just talked about. And we are talking about the toughest of the tough here. Little microbes, lichens that can literally grow on bare rock, and super resilient mosses. They're the true first responders of the natural world. And what's so brilliant about these pioneers is their strategy. They're incredibly tough, they grow super fast, and they don't live very long. But their most important job, their whole purpose really, is to prepare the ground for what comes next. This is that reaction stage in action. For instance, lichens release these weak acids that start to break down solid rock. I mean, they're creating the very first tiny bits of soil. They completely change the game, making it possible for other, more complex plants to eventually move in.
Okay, so we've met our first responders, but it turns out there are 2 main paths their comeback story can take. And really, it all depends on the starting line.
Path number 1 is called primary succession. And when I say starting from scratch, I mean really from scratch. This is the ultimate example of that nudation stage. This happens in a place where there's no life, and this is the critical part, there is absolutely no soil. We're talking bare rock left behind a glacier, a brand new lava flow, or a fresh sand dune.
And this table just lays it all out perfectly. Look at the key difference. It's all about the soil. See that? For primary succession, no soil, pioneers like lichens, and a super slow timescale. We're talking hundreds, even thousands of years. Now look at secondary succession. The key difference is right there in that second row. The soil is already there, and that gives it a massive head start. Which, of course, brings us to path number 2, secondary succession. This is a totally different ballgame. It's more of a rebuilding project. This happens after some kind of disturbance, like a fire, a flood, or when a farm is abandoned. The original community might be gone, but that crucial foundation, the soil, is still there. This lets things like weeds and grasses pop up really fast, making the whole process way quicker.
So no matter which path it takes, primary or secondary, this whole journey is heading somewhere. It's always building towards a final, stable destination. Let's take a look at what that end point looks like.
Now, along the way, the ecosystem goes through these, temporary phases. Each one of these intermediate stages is called a Seral Community. You can think of them as the stepping stones, or maybe the awkward teenage years of an ecosystem. They are just a snapshot of the community in transition, not the final picture.
And where's all this leading? Well, it's leading right here, to the Climax Community. This is the grand finale, that stabilization stage from our roadmap. It's a stable, mature, and complex ecosystem that's pretty much self-sustaining. Now, that doesn't mean it's frozen in time. It exists in what scientists call dynamic equilibrium. Basically, it's in a state of balance, but it's always making small adjustments to the climate.
So the main takeaway here is that a climax community is like the peak of what's possible for that particular environment. It's stable, it's mature, it's biologically complex, and it's perfectly in tune with its surroundings. When you picture a huge, old-growth forest, yeah, That's a classic Climax Community.
Okay, so we've covered the process, the key players, the final goal. But you might be asking, why does any of this matter? What's the big deal about succession?
Well, this is the big deal. As an ecosystem moves from those first pioneers towards a climax community, absolutely incredible things happen. Biodiversity just explodes. Food webs get way more complex and tangled. All these new jobs or niches are created for more and more species. This isn't just a list of facts. This is the very engine that builds resilient, thriving habitats out of literally nothing.
And honestly, this chart says it all. It's a pretty clear trend, isn't it? You start with low biodiversity in the pioneer stage, it grows through those intermediate Seral stages, and you end up with high biodiversity in the climax community. The journey of succession is fundamentally a journey towards more richness, more complexity, and more life.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty deep thought. We've been talking about a final stage or a climax, but this slide asks a great question. If nature is always in flux and disturbances are always happening, is any ecosystem ever really finished? Or is the real state of nature this constant process of change, of recovery, of succession itself? Definitely something to think about.